Now, data that's collected can be in a lot of different formats, and there's a lot of different types of data that we can collect. And so we want to talk about categorizing our data. So there are two main ways that we categorize our data. We've got first qualitative data, which is also called categorical data. And this is data where we're classifying objects or individuals into different categories. And so maybe we're actually talking about color of hair or color of eye or gender or sex or occupation, okay? Different ways that they may not actually be numbers that you're collecting about people or individuals, but it's something that allows you to categorize. And so maybe I am maybe looking at high school students and I'm collecting data about them, and one of the things I'm going to find is what grade they're in. And so I'd have my 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders, and that would separate them into different categories. Or maybe I'm looking at students in college and I'm going to find out their major, and I separate based on, well, I've got some business majors or in the sciences or in the arts, and that's a way that I can categorize my students based on kind of the field that they're studying. Our next type of data is quantitative data, and that's where our responses are numerical, numbers, and where we can perform meaningful arithmetic calculations. Now, this is important here because this means that I can take the numbers and I could maybe add them or subtract them or multiply and say, this number is double that. And it actually means something important. So, for example, in the previous example I gave, I talked about high school students and what grade they were in. Now, the grade number is actually a number, right? 9, 10, 11, and 12. However, because those numbers, I can't really do arithmetic operations with them, right? And say, oh, well, a 12th grader, that's double 6. And so 12th graders are double of what 6th graders are. Well, no, not really. That's not really meaningful at all. And so that wouldn't really be quantitative because I can't really do meaningful arithmetic calculations with it. However, quantitative data, an example of quantitative data would maybe be income, and say, well, I'm going to, survey some people and find what their annual income is. And that's a number. And I can do meaningful arithmetic calculations. I can say, well, if I were to add, 10,000 to this person's income, what does that mean? Well, it means that that's $10,000 more to their income. Or, if this person makes $90,000 per year and this person makes $45,000 per year, the fact that 90,000 is double 45 does mean that person has double the income. And so, that's a number that the number is actually pretty meaningful. And so that's quantitative data. Okay, so qualitative or categorical is where you have different categories. And quantitative is where you have numbers where the number itself is pretty significant and you can actually do things with the number itself. More examples and see if we can categorize them based on qualitative or categorical versus quantitative. So first, eye color of a group of people. So eye color, that's going to be described with a color, not a number. And so that's pretty easy to see that that's going to be a qualitative slash categorical. Next, we're looking at the daily high temperature of a city over several weeks. And, high temperature, that's going to be described by a number. And our question is, can we do things with numbers of temperatures, and is it meaningful the way that we can do different calculations? The numbers of temperature, 70 degrees versus 80 degrees, that 10 degree difference has a concrete meaning. That 10 degrees difference we would know exactly what that means. And or 30 degrees or 60 degrees. 60 is double of 30. And so this is a quantitative variable. Next is annual income. We actually talked about that. Annual income, that's a number, and the numbers themselves, the calculations, adding and subtracting and multiplying, things like that, are meaningful calculations. And so this is also a quantitative variable. Okay, last we're talking about conducting a survey to determine the name of the favorite movie that each person in our class saw in a movie theater. Well, here we're just looking at names of movies. Certainly not a number at all. And so that cannot be quantitative. This is qualitative or categorical. Let's look at a few more that are maybe a little bit harder to identify. First, here we were conducting a survey asking the number of movies you've seen in a movie theater in the past 12 months. Now, that's a number, so it makes us think quantitative. We just want to make sure that the numbers are meaningful and the way that we could calculate with them is meaningful. And so, with the number of movies that we've looked at, that we've watched, someone that's seen 4 movies has watched twice as many as someone that's watched 2 movies. So the calculation of multiplication, means something. Or if I watched 4 movies during summer and 2 movies not during summer, I could then add those together, that calculation, and say that I saw 6 movies for the year, and that's a meaningful calculation. And so this is quantitative data. Okay, next is gathering respondent zip codes in a survey to track geographical location. Now, a zip code is a number. However, the number of the 5 digits of the zip code is not particularly meaningful. If I take 2 different zip codes and add them, I don't get anything useful. I just get some other random number. And if one zip code is double another zip code, that's not really meaningful either. So even though it's described by a number, the numbers themselves don't actually mean the number. And so this is not quantitative. This is going to be qualitative. Or categorical. Okay, and then third, we've got a survey about the movie you most recently attended includes the question, how would you rate the movie you just saw, with the possible answers? 1, it was awful. 2, it was just okay. 3, I liked it. 4, it was great. And 5, best movie ever. We see here some numbers, but we also see these descriptions. And so even though we see numbers, that may make us think that it's quantitative. However, the numbers themselves don't really mean anything, right? We're not saying, 4 is not twice as good as a 2. Or, if I saw a movie that I rated 2 and a movie that I rated 3, I can't say, well, I add those together, I'm going to watch both movies and that ends up being 5. No, that's kind of meaningless. There's no way that we can use these numbers in a meaningful way. They're only used that way to order, but that's not an arithmetic operation. And so this, even though there's numbers, it's not quantitative. This is a qualitative or categorical.